Thank you for joining today. We're here to talk about designing animal facilities as community hubs. So from shelters to animal rehoming centers, council pounds, whatever shape or form they might be, really focusing on improving them to create a true community center. So I'm an architect, and I've been focusing on working with animal care facilities, both shelters as well as veterinarians, pet resorts, and other companion animal and industry clients for the last 23 years. The first 15 of which was across the United States, working with a lot of the cities and animal shelters across the U.S., that a lot of which really have led the industry and developed a lot of the standards and taught me what I know about animal sheltering. So since being in Australia, I'm now in my 8th year here. I've been working with similar clients in Australia and in New Zealand. So I'm sure everybody is aware and would agree that the days of animal pounds as really just holding spaces for animals are truly numbered. The expectations and opportunities for shelters to serve as really important community anchors are here, and we're seeing fewer and fewer of the old school pounds remaining as they slowly become refurbished, replaced, and supplanted by better, more state-of-the-art animal care facilities. And what's driving this change? A lot of it is or some of the negative things that create the need for this change is the community disengagement. The community really being disengaged from what's happening with unhomed animals, and also an associated negative stigma that can occur around animal shelters. And the consequences of this results in the two biggies are reduced adoptions and surrenders and a lack of funding and support. And the funding and support, that's an issue that can be either from council funding, local government funding, or donations, and that negative stigma and everybody's competing for dollars really needs to be addressed as by creating a shelter that serves as a community center. So what does that look like, and how do we get there? So to create a shelter as a dynamic community center, it really needs to foster the human-animal connection, serve an education purpose, and provide for some social well-being. And a successful community shelter will do all of these things. A successful community shelter happens when there's support for animals, the people, and the community. When all three of those kind of come together, that's when you really have a community-focused or a community-centered shelter. Now, how do we create that human-animal connection? How do we support that in a shelter? A lot of that comes from some of the design features that we can build into shelters. Primarily, spaces that allow people to interact directly with adoption animals, be it meet and greet spaces, or even just good, high-quality visual, stress-free connection with the adoptable animals or all animals that are in a shelter. So creating those spaces that are high quality, that are noise and odor free, that have low stress design for the animals and the people that are visiting. The results of all this is that it will increase adoption and improve public perception of your facility and your organization. That being said, we can never forget that animal care is the core of what we're doing here. And there are certain minimum expectations for animal housing, enrichment opportunities, and veterinary care that have to be addressed. I recommend to everybody that we look for opportunities to exceed the minimum mandated standards. Whether you're working in a state that has a clear code of practice with very prescriptive requirements or not, use those as only a starting point. We want to try to find really what best practice is, and a best practice that is manageable for your particular situation. Identify that and try to meet that standard. But should be an opportunity to create low stress spaces for animal and people. When we talk about community engagement opportunities, we're talking about improving the standing in the community and increasing your volunteer base, generating the financial support that everybody needs. The benefits to community engagement and how you get there is through the awareness, increased relevance in the community, and it provides for increased resilience. If you have more support in the community, more community engagement, your organization will be more resilient to the challenges that we face every day. Now, community-focused design principles. Key things we look for in a shelter are accessibility, inclusivity, and flexibility. So we have to have shelters that can be responsive to the community needs and provides access to everyone. How do we implement that? I think a big thing is location. Location, ironically, needs to have visibility in the community, needs to have green space around it. The idea of trying to move away from warehousing animals means let's not make it look like a warehouse. Creating these places that have good public access and a quality of design that exceeds the conventional animal pound is a good starting point. There needs to be a focus on transparency, though. So for a facility to serve as an education tool, and I'm talking about the facility itself being an education tool, you need to have programs on display. Create opportunities for things like behind-the-scene tours. And the community benefit for all of this is building that public trust and providing for education. This is one of my favorite images from a shelter in the U.S. that is from a public corridor, public space within the shelter that provides visual access to the surgical theater where they do routine desexing operations. Now, not everybody wants to work in that, in that surgical theater, and admittedly, not everybody wants to see what's going on, but in that case, they can close the blinds within that room. But when it's not being used, it also puts on display a lot of the mission and the function that the shelter is serving the community, showing the quality of veterinary care that they provide. So it's a little thing, but it actually does create an education opportunity for this organization that shows off to the community what they're doing. There's also opportunities even further back into each shelter, which is things that affect staff and volunteers. It might help with compassion fatigue. It might help with just increasing or sustaining volunteers and maintaining staff morale. But staff work areas need to be reflective of the quality of care that you're providing, and they need to be easy to maintain and operate. So the big ones here are high quality food prep and food management rooms, cleaning spaces, cleaners' closets, cleaning facilities, waste management facilities. Those types of things are very important, as well as good high quality laundry with sufficient storage to manage and maintain the operations of a modern shelter. So really, the overarching design considerations for anybody planning a shelter is remember that first impressions count. They indicate to the community They create a perception of care. How you look, what the impression is, generates this immediate perception of the care that you're providing for the animals. And then the other big one is creating that transparency and openness. The benefit of that is it builds trust. So how do you do it? Start with curb appeal and provide good public access to the facility, including allowing public visual access to where animals are actually being housed. So changing direction just slightly, we'll talk about a lot of the drivers that can influence design, and that is really around opportunities for social enterprises for community-centered design. So they're grouped into several different categories. So starting with animal care and pet-related social enterprises, consider low-cost veterinary clinics, increased veterinary facilities so that low-cost veterinary services can be provided to the community. Pet grooming and washing services, pretty basic thing, and there's even self-serve type pet grooming, hydrobaths, those types of things that can be provided that get people into the facility and may generate a little bit of income even. Things like pet boarding, even if it's just emergency boarding, or daycare services. Again, community services that can draw people to your facility, but they need to be built in as part of the design. Dog training and behavior classes. I'm a strong believer that every animal rehoming facility should be offering some support for dog training and behavior. And that's where a multi-purpose community room really serves a great purpose. It could be a space that's used for internal enrichment for shelter animals, as well as after hours or dedicated hours set aside for public behavior classes. When we talk about hospitality and community things that can serve as a social enterprise for animal shelters, there's a few things like having a cat cafe or pet cafes that actually serve as adoption spaces, get people in to interact with the animals, and are good quality spaces. That's slightly different than just a community coffee shop, although certainly those types of things are created by some shelters as well to generate revenue and be a service for people when they're visiting. Creating pet-friendly events, whether that's at the shelter itself or things like pet walk events, community walk events, those types of things. And also having that community space for hire can be a great way to build community. In smaller communities that might not have a lot of opportunities for public meeting spaces, having a community space for hire within the shelter can be a way to create a bond with the community. Other social enterprises: education and training, youth programs, school partnerships, corporate volunteering packages, and vocational training, whether it's nursing, working with your local TAFE or nursing, veterinary nursing program, animal care programs to get people in and allow some training on site, creates a great connection to the community, as well as some of those other corporate volunteering opportunities that you can have. There's some pretty unique or creative types of social enterprises that some shelters run as well. So think pet photography studios, or getting into the community and providing animal assisted therapy, getting the animals out in the community itself through volunteers, fosters, community walkers. Those types of things are great ways to increase your visibility in the community and reinforce that kind of community bond. Lastly, kind of retail and merchandise opportunities. Think op shops, but even pet supplies retail, and for organizations that have a real established brand and already are starting to get some of that community identity, then I think there's opportunities for branded merchandise sales. So each one of these items may carry a little bit of a specific need for a design response. If you're building something, each one of these might have a certain space that you need to incorporate that and be able to run it in your shelter. So what does it mean? Shelters for compassionate and connected communities really think beyond the cages. Think beyond just the animal housing. Animal housing is the starting point. It needs to be done correctly, but it goes far beyond that into much other items that can support your shelter as a community center. Thank you.